Welcome to One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers, where we get curious about what makes us tick. We're here today with a woman who's taken a less than conventional path in her career. Welcome, Rachel Allan.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, Ian.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat. I know we've been chatting forever, actually, before we started recording this morning, so we'll cover some of that as well. But let's just start with, to sort of get us into it. Rachel, what do you do now?
What do I do now? Voluntary unemployed. So at the moment, I am mum to 3 gorgeous little girls, age 9 and twins, just about to become 6. Twintastic, so that's a job in its own right. Other half to Stuart, and school governor. And probably since February, just dip my toe back into the world of work a little bit.
Right.
After taking voluntary redundancy.
Well, so you know the format, what we're going to talk about here. I'm always fascinated by the journey. So let's start. Take us back as far as you want to start.
The journey.
How did you get to where you are now, and what you were doing, obviously, before you left?
Probably I'll take you back to A levels. Spent 2 years, had a great time. And then, yes, didn't do very well at the end of it, probably because the subjects probably didn't lend themselves, more traditional subjects.
Right.
So came out with my best friend at the time, and between us, I think she'd got an E, I'd got 2 Ds and 2 Ns, so we'd done astoundingly well.
Yeah.
And you know what? And I'd set my heart as well on going to the University of Brighton, and so obviously missed the grades. So then there was a bit of a decision point of, there was clearing, and these grades weren't brilliant, and people talk about grades opening doors, but I decided to stay at home in Nottingham, or just the other side of Nottingham, and did politics, economics and business studies. And actually my tutor who taught me in sixth form had felt that, for whatever reason, I'd crashed and burned, so I had some kind of coaching with him along the 8 months, and smashed it. And we're not going into grades, but smashed it and got what I needed. So went back to my first choice, which had been international business studies with languages at the University of Brighton.
Right.
So probably for any younger listeners, viewers, whatever, when they come out, you think, when you're there and you're 18 or 19 and you've not passed any, oh no, my life has ended and whatever.
But it's not.
No, my dad had been quite sanguine, because my dad actually had been a straight A student all through his life, and then came to his finals at university, Sheffield University, civil engineering, and he messed up his finals.
Right.
So my dad retook his final year of kind of university after having been like a straight A student all his life. So he gave me quite good advice. You are so young, you can either go through clearing and explore something else, or if that's what you want to do at Brighton, if that's the course you want on the south coast, then what's another 12 months, go for it. So I set my heart on Brighton, went back to college in Nottingham, redid my A levels in 8 months or 9 months, whatever, his intensive course, got them, then had actually better grades that I could have gone somewhere else, but stuck with it was Brighton. That was what I wanted to do. And at the time as well, it was all the starting of the European Union. So, and Brighton was quite international business. It had links with other institutions in Europe. But
and was the international bit, was that the thing that was, that was where your interest was?
Yeah, that was where the interest was. So got there a year later than planned, but got there, and it was great. And then came to the gap year, and then part of my interest could either go into a traditional work placement. I think it was, I can't remember now, Apple, British Telecom, British Gas. Brilliant opportunities. So no, plenty of time for the world of work. So I took myself initially on this, because the university was forging lots of European links, and went from Brighton and spent 6 months at the Horgan School for Economische Studies in Amsterdam.
Wow.
Absolutely fabulous.
And was it this, because I mean this international piece sounds really, and was that what was driving you? Was that why you went back and retook, because you really wanted to do this international thing?
I really liked the look of the international. So rather than just a straight business studies degree at a more traditional red brick university, which I then latterly had the grades for, or or accounting and finance. There was something about the international business studies with the languages.
Yeah.
And my language was Spanish. And again, a very good ex-grammar school I went to, and we learned French and German and Latin. So I think the only thing I remember from Latin was Caecilius sedebant in el forum, Caecilius sat in the hall. But they didn't do Spanish. Which means Caecilius sat in the hallway, I think.
Right.
So much to my mum and dad's delight, took myself off to the local technical college, enrolled myself in evening classes and started doing Spanish as a teenager at evening classes.
Wow.
So I did that under my own bat, and then latterly did something called the Institute of Linguists, which is almost the vocational equivalent to an A-level. So you see, I might have crashed my original A-levels, but got my Institute of Linguists, almost a vocational A-level in Spanish, which then lent itself to Brighton International Business Studies with Spanish.
It's interesting, isn't it? Once you've latched onto something that you really, really want to do, then it all kind of starts to become relevant rather than just ticking boxes, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember I failed my German first time round when I was at school, and then going to a comprehensive school, there were a number of us who said, "Oh, you need to apply for Oxford and Cambridge," and which I failed, by the way. But they said, "Oh, yeah, great. So you need a language," and I thought, "Oh, I haven't got one of those."
Yeah.
So similarly, like in 6 to 8 months, did that. But when you're driven,
when you want to do it and when you can use it, when you get and you know, because the holidays were typically Spain based. I couldn't use this French, learn this French. Now I regret it. So if I ever regret almost now, I wish I'd paid a bit more attention, and I can't. But Spanish I could learn, I could use, anyway. And like you said, I set my mind on I want to do this. So
right.
it was my mum who bore the brunt of it, driving me over to the technical college one night a week. So Brighton.
So then from that then into what happens next?
So Horgage School for Economist Studies, absolutely brilliant. Could stay there for the latter part for another semester. So I'd done almost the half year, and then people were going off and again getting various work placements. So I was interviewed on the outskirts of Amsterdam, great places, to get again a more traditional work placement, be it in Holland, in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
I was like, no. I've done the international bit. I've done Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Spain. Need to go to Spain and learn Spanish. So I made an application, spoke to the tutor who was really, set up the new international business, really pro-European. She said, well, there are some additional Erasmus funds not spent. So if you can put a proposal together, we will consider it.
Right.
Brilliant. Malaga University, Corso de, intensive course for extranjeros. Anyway, I can't remember now. Intensive Spanish course, 3 months over the summer at Malaga University. So submitted my thing to the Erasmus leftover funds. Brighton approved it. Off I went. So then I went from Amsterdam to Malaga.
Right.
Living with a host family. Again, putting into practice, where you can really speak the language if you can talk to the teenage son had taken me out in Malaga on the bicycles and with my pidgin Spanish or whatever.
Brilliant.
And quite a very, very strong dialect in Andalus here as well.
Right.
So quite different from the traditional kind of Spanish I'd learned. So spent the summer doing that. Then opened a bar with for the summer in Marbella. Just opened a bar for 12 weeks, these little units you rented.
So you opened the bar?
Opened a bar with somebody I'd met.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so opened a bar and ran it all summer in a place called Porto Deportivo in Marbella. Mm-hmm. And so opened a bar for the summer with somebody I'd met in Malaga. And did that for about 3 or 4 months. Just little units that you rented, probably in a bit bigger than this room we're in now.
Yeah.
So we painted it and whatever, ran that. Didn't turn a profit till later in the summer, so it was a bit on my overdraft. So it was before phones of nowadays and internet and whatever.
Yeah.
So you did have NatWest Bank wondering why my overdraft was going through the roof. Did have Dad ringing me up going, I've told the bank it's all okay and I'm underwriting this overdraft, but are you actually coming home? Oh, Dad, there's a really bad from the payphone. It's really crackly, I can't hear you. I'm fine. Oh, crackle. In the end, again, brilliant summer, more than broke even. So came back with the proceeds of the bar, had a super time, paid off the overdraft, back for the final year of university.
See, I knew it was an unconventional route, but I didn't realise quite how unconventional.
Quite how unconventional. So then decided finance. So decided I had to take final options. What did I want to do? Finance, money. Because if you control, my then thought process was I wanted to become an accountant. If you control the cash flow, if you control the numbers, if you control the commercials in business, well, you're at the centre of it, aren't you? Then you control it. So that's what I thought. So did finance options in my last year, kept up the Spanish, finished. So went off, thought, what should I do? Anyway, got myself on graduate scheme, Northern Foods. So if you used to remember, used to be Northern Foods, it still is on the motorway. You see the big trucks with NFT, Northern Foods Transport.
Oh, I didn't realise that's what it started.
Northern Foods. And at the time it used to be huge. So it was Northern Foods, and later was split off to be Express Dairies, which later became Arla, I believe.
Right.
So anyway, so
there you are. So you're now in finance. So
finance.
you've gone. It was international. You wanted that international element was really important. Commercial thread. Yeah. So now we're in finance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So now I'm in finance at Northern Foods. Brilliant graduate scheme. Great time. And embarked on my CIMA exams. So Chartered Institute of Management Accountants.
Yeah. So when we first met, you were in human resources.
Yeah.
So
how? So
because at this point, and I know from chatting to other people as well, if you were going to be into human resources, you'd expect to follow that thread back.
You'd have
been
so at this time. So now I've done with all that stuff of overseas and whatever, and now we're serious and we're going to do finance. I got 3/4 of the way through my exams. There used to be 4 levels, and I was a bit like, I'm not sure even this is for me. But I've started, so I've finished. So, and it is a very good business. It's a very good business qualification. So finished my exams, but was always going into different things. So remember latterly in Northern Foods, do you remember year 2000 when we all thought everything wouldn't work? We thought that the clock would tick
Y2K,
over and it would all just crash.
Yeah.
So got myself on a project team there for business readiness for year 2000. Started getting involved in systems, but they weren't really for me either, the kind of information technology and things. So then left Northern Foods. So then became qualified.
Yeah.
Went from very adventurous pork farms on the industrial estate in Nottingham to one of their businesses that made all of the ready meals and pizzas for Marks and Spencer's.
Right.
200 metres further into the industrial estate. Did a stint there, and then latterly came back again to pork farms. So I'd kind of, I'd gone across the same industrial estate over 4 or 5 years. But great things. I mean, been up to Fox's Biscuits in Batley, packing biscuits.
Right.
As a graduate, you had to work on the production line for a week.
Right.
To bring you in touch with the people, because too many people come in like we're grads.
Okay.
And we will save the world. So, got party rings. I'll never look at a party ring. I can't remember what colour I was. Spent a whole week on a production line picking 5 party rings and putting them in a box. So then...
Could you eat the biscuits?
You were allowed to afterwards, but you couldn't eat them on the production line because of obviously your fingers. Yeah, but when I'd left there, I never wanted to look at it for a short time, because part of the thing of in the kind of staff area, you could take as many biscuits, Fox's Biscuits home as you want. Yeah. Didn't eat any for quite a long time. Anyway, then got a role. At Northern Foods as well, had started to implement SAP.
Yeah.
So again, I was coming out of traditional finance roles into SAP. Then a role arose in SAP in Derby, a well-known aerospace company, Rolls-Royce.
Yes.
So by then, you see, I'm getting very adventurous. So I've come from Brighton, spent 5 years back in Nottingham, and now I've gone west a little bit.
Yeah.
So
you're over the border.
I'm over the border. I've come into Derbyshire.
Yeah.
I'm into Derbyshire now, so I might make it to Stoke by the time I retire. So joined Rolls-Royce on their SAP implementation, and always remembered a great guy, Richard Goatman, who was the SAP director.
Yeah.
And there I was again, like, Roman, got to get at this. And it was a bit like, young lady, you've got to learn the way of Rolls-Royce, and you've got to just absorb it and truly appreciate it.
Just steady down.
Just steady down.
Yeah.
And I was used to working in an environment where, on fax, the orders for the supermarket, fresh food, you'd have provisional orders, and the final order would come in at 5 a.m. And the factory would gear up to make all of these ready meals.
Yeah.
And then you had a slot that you would make all this food, it would go on a wagon. The Northern Foods Transport would wait for you for about 15 minutes because it had a slot at a depot with a Marks and Spencer's, a Tesco, a Sainsbury's, and almost if you missed your slot, the whole wagon could get turned around. And then the staff shop was brilliant because it was full of us. So I go to Rolls-Royce and we would do a 48 engine. And I was like, okay. And I was used to this environment where... Pace. It was real. It was fresh food.
Yeah.
It was fresh food that went off. We brought asparagus from China, and this order came in on fax.
Yeah.
The final order, or EDI as it used to be, and then we'd make it, and these wagons would roll.
Yeah.
So I came to Rolls-Royce, and I was given the advice that people either love it or hate it. You'll either find people jump quite quickly, or they stay a long time. So again, on their SAP implementation in aerospace, so did that. Then got a role in aftermarket in a finance role. Then went into purchasing, loved it.
Yeah.
Then went into a project about relationships with suppliers, whereby the premise was on almost the experience of Chrysler, that you get more out of your supply chain if you actually work in partnership than the banging of the I want.
Yeah.
So did that. So you see all the time the background of finance, but almost trying to explore the different avenues and something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And then probably one of my changing roles was 2 joint ventures. And I went there as financial controller, 2 joint ventures, partnership between the Derby Aerospace Company and another company. And discovered actually, I hadn't quite realised this, but the first day I arrived, discovered that as part of the joint venture agreement, not only was I responsible for finance, but I was responsible for human resources, IT, purchasing, what else? Health and safety. So I was like, okay, it's fine. I loved it, Ian.
And what was it? Was it because there was variety now? Suddenly it was, you got the ability to explore lots of different things.
It was the nearest you'll ever get whilst still under the umbrella of the mothership.
Yeah.
But it's the nearest you would ever get to running a small business. So one of the sites at the time had about 220 employees. The other site had about 180, so 2 genuine small businesses.
Yeah.
It's the joint ventures where I started to see the power of the people, the impact people have, rather than just the numbers.
Yeah.
So I had to manage the numbers. So what I started to find was the stats that both businesses, I suppose, weren't brilliant, the kind of the quality, the delivery, but the people weren't engaged. And the 2 motherships would help, but they would draft in secondees, they would draft in their ways of doing things, their procedures. There wasn't any ownership of the people. They almost, I think, felt a bit like, these secondees come in. It used to be this secondee roundabout. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Another secondee. And because the leadership teams as well were all secondee positions, there always used to be this glass ceiling that people would think, well, why? Why bother? We can't go anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
So one of the first things we did was very quickly we made it so that we were the only two secondee positions. So we then got quite targeted about the secondees we wanted, and then we empowered the people.
Right.
And we empowered the people in the facility to actually be in control of their own destiny. And rather than the 2 secondee companies coming in and thinking they knew what the issue was, actually it was in the people.
See, that's the thing that sticks in my memory a lot of one of the first times that we met in the business space is when you were presenting on an event that we were running and talking about HR.
Yeah.
And this theme of engagement really came out because I think we'd had a number of guest speakers in from a large company, and the PowerPoint slides would go up.
Oh, I hate PowerPoint.
And Rachel, you turned up with a flip chart and a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, and it was, and you could see people at that they were involved. They were with you.
Yeah, no, I don't. It's partly because I'm technophobia. I probably couldn't do a PowerPoint,
but it really worked, though, didn't it?
Yeah, PowerPoint. So we engaged. So we started being quite targeted, and it was there, Ian. So it was there that the financial controller from purchasing, who'd been 30-something on the leadership team, only woman, had been given feedback in her mid-30s or early 30s about Rachel, if I want something done, you're my person. If I want something done on time, to the letter, over the line, you're the person.
Right.
But you might want to think about your style a little bit. And sometimes, although you're of my leadership team, I really rely on you, you'll do it on time. You do leave a few dead bodies. And at the time, I did think, well, what's the problem? I get it done. I get it done. I get it done on time, to the letter, in budget, on budget.
Yeah.
What's the problem?
Yeah.
All right, there's a few people that, I might have been a bit brusque with. I was never rude, but I might have been a bit brusque with on the way of getting there.
Yeah.
What's the problem? So I left that particular annual review on you, kind of thinking, I don't understand that. Get it done. Get it done. What's all this about leading casualties? And as you get a bit older and you start to see, and it started there at the 2 joint ventures. I started to actually see the power in the people, and you could achieve a lot more than being I'm the financial controller, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
It's all about the money.
Yeah.
It's all about on time, on budget. Actually, you turn the oil tanker with the people.
With the people.
The people. So like I said, did that for 4 years. Oh, fantastic. And and I could really see, as soon as you engage the people, they had no identity. We got their own workwear with their own logos on. We had too many secondees in certain areas coming in the secondees workwear, talking about how great it was at the motherships. And then we used to wonder why we had a brain drain, that almost the people would get the skill set, and then as soon as a job came up in either of the mothership, we wondered why they applied, and off they went.
So what a great way to arrive at human resources, not having, if you're not being taught the theory, but have recognised the power of that true engagement. I think that's brilliant.
And do you know what? I loved the people side of it more than the finance side. So I started to talk to people back in the mothership about maybe doing a HR role, and I didn't. And I think I was probably scared to jump. But the power I'd seen in engagement and the people, and we set up a bonus scheme for the people. We set up career development for the people.
Yeah.
We stopped all of the secondee roles so people could progress. So what I'd really seen is what changed things was the power of people. So 4 years, Stuart was offered a job overseas in Berlin. Brilliant. What's not to? But it was quite a traditional finance role. I wasn't sure. At the same time, my dad got diagnosed with motor neuron disease.
Right.
Best prognosis 2 years. Will be rapid, will be less. Now I have to give all credit to the general manager had been at the joint venture, because he knew I was wavering. He knew how I was feeling about my dad. And he was the other company. He wasn't the kind of. And actually, he was like, Rachel, if you want to stay, I know you've signed, and you've said you're going and you're leaving now the joint venture after 4 years. But if you want to stay, without question, you can stay. Yeah. But Berlin, my husband Stuart's going, great opportunity. And again, for people, sometimes in this life, when your gut tells you not to do something, your head says it's a good idea, but your gut says. But anyway, I went, and it was great in a finance role. And at which point my dad went off in his motorhome to Italy. So I spent many a time flying from Berlin to Bergamo, I think it was, visiting my dad at weekends. So again, I've left the East Midlands behind. But yeah, the role wasn't for me. The role, I don't know. It was a great experience, Berlin, but my gut had told me not to go.
Yeah.
So I did that for 12 or 18 months. Life's too short. And actually, as brilliant an opportunity as this has been, and I've met some fantastic people, actually, this is not the role I want to do. So started putting feelers back into the mothership of Derby about could there be a secondment in HR?
Yeah.
Now, you see, you're unpopular when you're a finance person in a joint venture, let alone now being a finance person in a joint venture who did HR as well. Yeah. So I started putting feelers out, were there any opportunities? And there was. So came back to Derby on a secondment in HR. So that was probably about 10 years ago. Had my 3 kids, and project work lent itself much better than operational line roles
Yeah.
to could do part-time, could do 3 days a week. And then it came to the point of I'd become a mum probably a bit later in life than I'd planned. But then it's quite scary because I had these 3 brilliant young children and I wanted to read them their bedtime story and be there now, be here now. I didn't want to be reading the story and flipping open the laptop and thinking about the next day.
Yeah.
But then you get in this turmoil of, but at this point I'd been at Rolls-Royce, I think just short of 20 years or just sort of 19 years. But you get in that, this is madness. This is a blue chip employer that looks after their employees with brilliant progression and development,
Yeah.
I've done big roles, I've done global roles, I've been, like I said, dabbled in small business. I've gone overseas, they've let me stick my hand up and gone, oh, sorry about this, don't think I want to do finance anymore. Can I have a bit of a try in HR, please? Oh, not sure about HR now. Think actually, I'd like to kind of try and change projects and people in kind of HR meets project management.
Yeah.
Could I do? So a huge company that has the wherewithal to let its perceived talent. And then I got to a point of actually, I want to be mum for a while. And I want to read stories and I want to do homework and I want to go to sports day.
Yeah.
And I'd started helping in school and that's what I want to do. But then this thing inside you that says, but you are mad. You are mad. You have a pension with 19 or 20 years of this and a very nice company car on the drive and this is madness. So took the plunge. So there was a reorganisation. It got to absolutely the morning of, applications had to be in at noon. I had written my application for 2 jobs again.
And this is the applications to leave?
The applications to stay.
Oh, to stay.
To stay. So I had written 2 applications to stay. There were 2 roles in the HR restructure that probably lent themselves quite well to me. Almost like PMO, kind of HR project management office, but change projecty kind of roles. Had done it had drafted them, had them ready. And sat there at my desk at 11 o'clock and the deadline was noon and another fabulous lady that lives not far from here, I was like, Anne, I can't do it. I either can't send the application, the scariness of, I have written it. The easiest thing would have been to send it in. Yes, please, I'd like to stay. Great company, 3 days a week. But there was something in gut and heart that said, don't do it. It's time to do something else. And I'd forgotten my purse. I was in such a tiz that morning, I forgot my purse. So Anne took me off and bought me a sandwich and a cup of tea, for which I'd always be grateful. And we sat there and noon passed and I didn't send it. I had it written. I had 2 applications filled in for the applying for the roles in the new organisation and I didn't send it. I came back to Stuart. I said, right, I'm going to have to be supportive here, Stuart. I said, right, how did it go then? Did you send it in? I said, I didn't send it. And he's like, you did what? I said, I didn't send it. And it was fine, because we'd had a family discussion that it wasn't the end of the world if I didn't.
Yeah.
But I'd gone off with 2, absolutely pocket application forms ready to send. And I came back.
But your gut was saying...
My gut said, don't do it. And all credit to the mothership. They really did take care of me and made sure. And people took me on one side and said, are you sure? And are you really sure? And you can still. And I had written the things, didn't send them. So then I went off so I finally left in the September. And then just became mum and helped at school. Had already become a school governor, wanted to use the school brain. So became a school governor and helped in school, became a parent helper. And then came COVID. And oh my goodness, who would be a head teacher in COVID? And I think really added some value. So all of that 24 years worth of corporate blue chip investment in me, about planning and budgets and why, and head teachers in COVID. Government guidelines coming out the night before. Couldn't have a more anxious set of stakeholders than parents wondering, can our children come to school? Can they not come to school? I think was it March the 22nd or the school closed? Yeah. So I hope I added value. Walking around the school building made me think of you actually, and the course with the head teacher of one particular school going, why? Why? Trying to work out within guidelines how many children we could get back into school for key worker. Why? Well, we can't do. Why? And the rules of them, like, right. And again, very often, Ian, I don't know the answers, but show me those guidelines. Oh, so we've got to be 2 metres apart. We've got to do this. We've got to have ventilation.
So you're able to bring all of that.
Why? The answers weren't in me, but what I was able to unlock walking around the school building with the head teacher. Why can't we use that space? Well, this is stored there. Well, why? And why can't we put a card? No, why can't we do this? And why
challenging them.
As well as budgets and yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, I mean, I knew it was an unconventional route, but Rachel, what an amazing route.
Failed A-levels, a bar in Spain.
But following that gut.
Yeah.
And the difference when you'd worked out what it was you wanted, how you kind of made it happen.
Yeah.
So we could talk forever on this. I want to ask you one more question. If we could master time travel, so let's take that as an assumption, and you could write the younger Rachel a note in an envelope, as far back as you think it would be useful, what note would you write to your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Do what lifts you up and lights you up. Do balance. There's a time for heart and there's a time for head.
That's brilliant. Oh, thank you so much for that. That's a brilliant conversation. I love it. Look, I hope you know.
Oh my goodness.
No, that's been really great. So I'll wrap this now.
This is the lady that isn't even on LinkedIn and doesn't do social media.
I know. So let's close. So this has been One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers. Hope you've enjoyed the conversation with our guest Rachel today. If there's anything that you'd like to follow up with myself or Rachel, please reach out and get in contact. And if you've enjoyed it, please like and share, and look out for our other podcasts. See you soon.